No one expects this week to be how it is. We're flooring it this week. Your ofrenda can now have a Harry Potter style moving picture of your ancestors that talks. You don't even have to do automatic writing anymore during your ancestral rituals. You don't even have to say the Orphic hymn to Hermes Catonius. The Google Workspace platform is adding something called multi-party approval. So if you do something in Google Workspace that's like a big change, you can turn on this feature that it's like, are you sure you want to do this? And it'll have you seek approval from others in the workspace, which is the most Aquarian thing ever. It's a cool idea. And it's where everything is headed. It's where voting is headed. Countries with not as much money as other countries must now demonstrate accounting and transparency stuff in order to obtain wealth and resources related to climate change. From the report, it's in order to get funding to help them, quote, cut their greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impacts of extreme weather. And the person who will lead the COP29 UN Climate Summit in November has said, quote, this is a very, very important step in the creation of a transparency mechanism between countries. And I find this very, very important because this transparency mechanism will be extended to all people. So Web3 is you have to have a digital ID to access anything that's built on Web3. So that's like, a MetaMask is a digital ID. And the premise is all your data is private, and it is on blockchain verifiably private. But if you need any sort of assistance, very much like these countries who don't have as much wealth and resources, people with not as much wealth and resources are going to have this transparency mechanism between you as a human dependent on some other like government assistance or any type of approval, and the holder of those wealth and the potential distributor of wealth and resources for you. So the transparency is for you. A brief sidebar, there is a presidential candidate who wants to put the US budget on blockchain, and that's important to inure you to blockchain. Also, it's important to ripping up the Constitution and making what used to be the Constitution a series of smart contracts, because code is law. There were a couple other headlines saying that the UN warns that the world is on the edge of climate abyss, and another one saying record-breaking increase in CO2 levels in the world's atmosphere. I forget where something somewhere is being tabled for climate lockdowns. On that note, it kind of like comes and goes, the hand-wringing over cybersecurity or like cyber attacks from foreign bad actors on the US infrastructure. And I keep getting ads in the informative business IT newsletters I read for Splunk, which is, I think, similar to Palantir. In one of the ads, it says the world's largest enterprises rely on Splunk's unified security and observability platform to keep their mission-critical digital systems secure and reliable. Yes, I'm reading an ad. No, I'm not sponsored by Splunk. I'm just saying it's not impossible to get the infrastructure for the things we rely on, like water or whatever, secure. Because Coca-Cola does it, so let them drink Coca-Cola. A company that specializes in this, that was bought by Cisco, which is a huge deal. So it must be effective or have a lot of potential to be effective. Lots of big companies use it. But in the news, we keep hearing this refrain about cyber attacks on our critical infrastructure. And I want you to think about Pluto in Aquarius. Aquarius, a part of what that is the technology, bringing the technology to bring water to the people so that you don't have to like hike out into the middle of nowhere to a pure unpolluted water source and like carry the water on your back. Instead, our kings, our leaders have enabled the technology to bring water to us. And the same for electricity, garbage collection, etc. So that's Aquarius. That's that technology. It's like management and authority and technology and bearing water. It's not water, it's the bearing of the water. Pluto is transiting Aquarius. So that's fear of corruption, and it's also actual corruption of these systems. Something to think about. Speaking of ads, Electronic Arts is thinking about putting in-game ads in traditional AAA games. I don't know what that means. If you know what that means, tell me. But in the article, it says these are games which people purchase for about $70 each. So they're thinking about putting ads in these. We're used to like free things being full of ads, but now paid things are going to be full of ads. So now you'll have to pay more and more to get rid of the ads. Remember in Mike Judge's film Idiocracy, most people, even I think the president, wear clothes that are covered in ads. So speaking of paying not to be shown ads, or not to have like having to pay a lot to stave off intrusion of any kind. There's a Rest of World article, which is a funny name for a website. Like that would be like if there was a website called Flyover States. This is a quote from the article from Rest of World. Olga de Leon looked confused as she walked out of a nightclub on the edge of Buenos Aires. She had just had her iris scanned. Quote from Olga, "No one told me what they'll do with my eye," said de Leon, 57 years old. "But I did this out of need." And in exchange, she received almost $50 worth of WLD, which is the WorldCoin cryptocurrency. So that also implies that she was compelled to create a wallet, a digital wallet, which is a digital ID. So now you're equipped to access all manner of Web3 things in the future. Also in the article, it says that experts have sounded the alarm about the dangers of giving away biometric data. I just want to tell you about this one time where I went to every single Disney World park in one day, and each time I entered, I refrained from giving my biometric data, which I know my biometric data is being collected all over the park, but to enter, you have a fingerprint to enter an American amusement park. A couple of times, mind you, there are other times where I just let him do it, but it was very important to me on this day that I not have my biometric data taken, and it was really difficult. Like, they gave me a hard time every time at Disneyland, American amusement park, sorry, Disney World. But a couple times they're like, okay, well, we'll just take your picture. And I was like, no, I don't want any biometric data taken of me today. I'll show you my ID. And of course, like, that has my face on it, so it's impossible. Anyway, all that's interesting, given how like experts are sounding the alarm. But if you want to go to like a major amusement park, they've been doing it for years. According to WorldCoin, 10 million people in 160 countries have created a WorldCoin ID and a wallet, and 5,195,475 people had also verified their World ID using WorldCoin's iris scanning orb. This causes me to teleport into the future where you have a wallet, but is it verified? I mean, we do it now. Like, you have a LinkedIn, but is it verified? And in the Mike Judge film Idiocracy, the future was a world where if you didn't have a barcode tattoo, people were afraid of you because you're unscannable. So the Rest of World article notes that the number of countries who allow WorldCoin iris scanning used to be 25 and now it's just 8. But that's interesting because this is where the world is headed. People are resisting it a lot. But it's where everything's headed. Ultimately, maybe it won't work. But as of right now, that's where everything's being pushed into. And WorldCoin is Sam Altman, darling leader of OpenAI's blockchain project. This week I saw a slide in some like lecture about legal stuff and blockchain and AI. It like involved a recently selected vice presidential candidate. And the headline in this slide deck is from the MIT Technology Review. The headline is, AI software is better than judges at determining whether criminal defendants are flight risks. The slide is from the YouTube account Tech Open Air, TOA. The video is called "Can AI Lawyers Replace Real Lawyers?" A part of the description says, "What does it mean to be a lawyer in the age of artificial intelligence?" Attorney and founder of Clear Access IP, Nicole Shanahan, explains all. But when I tried to find the MIT Technology Review article, it's gone. The only place I can find it is something called Birdie, which references the article, but it's not on MIT Technology Review anymore. If I try to find it on that website, the closest thing I can find is something that's like, hey, play this game about AI and lawyers and stuff. AI law. Remember, a popular coding boot camp teaches you, if you want to learn about blockchain, one of the first things they teach you is that there's a cute little old chestnut of a saying that we say in the blockchain community that is, code is law. And this brings me back to the Constitution being done away with and it being replaced with smart contracts. And when I tabled this idea on TikTok several months ago, it got a lot of attention, and it was like positive attention. I was criticizing it, but the attention I got was like, hell yeah. They thought that I was advocating for it. Someone was like, yeah, on-chain governance. Hooray! This brings me to Jupiter and Gemini, which I'll talk about a little later. I think there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm around this stuff. Governance, changing what we are used to thinking of as currency now into the tokenized signals intelligence economy. There'll be a lot of enthusiasm around that in the coming year. That will get us ready for Uranus in Gemini in 2025. So yeah, that headline has been scrubbed from the internet. And I was talking about this last week. How like major articles from Forbes gone. A headline from the Next Web says, Pussy Riot lawyer launches blockchain-based poll to challenge legitimacy of Russian elections. The thing you think is counter-establishment is the establishment. This headline sums up so much of it. And remember, there's a video like from the 80s, and it is a guy. The video clip is about how he talks at length about how psyops take a long time. It's about how if you want to degrade one form of collective consciousness and replace it with another, it takes a really long time. You inure people into it. You don't like tell them what's up, tell them they're wrong. You make them right. Okay, so there's that. So in science headlines this week, there's a paper published in the journal or something, Cell, saying that, quote, changes in glucose metabolism could help cancer grow. And this is higher in people who have pre-existing weaknesses, obviously, as is everything. The takeaway is that poor diet might have something to do with cancer. Just assuming that nobody didn't already know that. Changes in glucose metabolism. I think that means when you use sugar for energy. So this headline is very interesting given what they feed you in the hospital if you're on chemotherapy. And then the takeaway, high methyl glyoxyl levels can usually be controlled with medicines and a good diet. So I don't know if they mean that for people who already have this pre-existing weaknesses, like if you're diabetic or something, or if they mean for everybody. But okay, sugar, it's in the news. And it's, if you look at the article published in Cell, like look at the name of this article. It's not, why don't they just say that? Sugar is not helpful for cancer. So Google DeepMind has a program called AlphaFold, and it can predict how proteins behave. So V1 of AlphaFold, previously, they could predict what shape a protein takes, and that determines how a protein will function or malfunction. But V2, the breakthrough, which is why it's in the news, the model can now predict how proteins will interact with other molecules and ions. And it says that AlphaFold 3, the current version, was trained on a global database of 3D molecular structures. And the predictive accuracy of this protein modeling, it can predict how it will interact, how it will behave. It can predict behavior. Predictive analytics for biology. The accuracy, it says, varies from 62% to 76%. Also in Biotech news, the most detailed 3D reconstruction of human brain tissue, published in the journal Science. And they're also partnered with Google AI, which I don't know if that's the same as DeepMind. This, from the article, quote, this remarkable feat is the culmination of nearly a decade of collaboration between Harvard and Google. Lichtman's expertise in electron microscopy imaging is combined with Google's cutting-edge AI algorithms. So far in biotech news, sugar causes cancer, or makes it worse. Sugar exacerbates cancer, but we're going to put it in confusing language. And Google can predict the behavior of proteins. And so it's like predictive analytics and mapping. And then also in the news this week, Neuralink's first implant, their first patient, it is partly detached from the brain. So the brain's like, why don't they just use John C. Lilly's technology? This technology has been around for a long time, like in getting stuff into the brain technology. But it's mostly like controlling the brain, not having the brain control things. But in like old-timey controlling the brain history, I'm going to read an excerpt or a few excerpts from this book, which is, it's the manual of technology moving forward. So if you should read it. I highly recommend it. John Lilly had developed tiny stainless steel sleeves. You could tap into a subject's skull and then slip gossamer electrodes through with virtually no swelling or lasting harm. He'd also built a machine that sent bidirectional electrical pulses through the brain that simulated neurons without knocking them out of balance. This procedure itself was virtually painless, nothing more than pinpricks. As the sleeve guides went in, electrodes could be inserted to any depth in the brain, from the cortex down to the amygdala. And the guides could remain embedded and undetected for months or even years. This is a different paragraph. When the director of the National Institute of Mental Health told John C. Lilly to brief the Pentagon on his work, he expressed concern. Lilly did. Anybody with the proper apparatus can carry this out on a human being covertly, he recounted in his autobiography, The Scientist. If this technique got into the hands of a secret agency, they would have total control over a human being and be able to change his beliefs extremely quickly, leaving little evidence of what they had done. And then another paragraph. What he hadn't counted on was how relentless the military could be. Not long after that initial presentation, Lilly was contacted again, this time by an unnamed representative of the Sandia Corporation, a Lockheed Martin subsidiary and longtime defense contractor. He wanted to, quote, learn the technique of inserting the sleeve guides into the heads of large animals. Again, Lilly insisted on keeping the work declassified, but agreed to let the man come film his latest experiments. A few years later, Harper's Magazine wrote an in-depth piece on Sandia detailing their, quote, super mule project, a donkey-horse hybrid equipped with electrode implants and a solar compass. The mule carried its load quite likely a suitcase nuke, this is still, I'm quoting, in an exact straight line, regardless of terrain. If it veered, it was punished with pain. If it tracked, it was rewarded with pleasure. As he read the piece, Lilly was shocked to recognize a photo of the man who had filmed his experiment. John C. Lilly was born in 1915 and died in 2001. Also, he had Jupiter and Uranus and the North Node in Aquarius. And he wrote the book Programming and Metaprogramming and the Human Biocomputer. A UK startup called Wave got $1 billion in funding, and it's a self-driving car company. And this is a big deal because UK startups aren't really getting that much like money and attention. But the thing that caught my eye is they're calling their technology, quote, embodied AI. But the future of all technology is embodied. Your human body and biology is the most advanced technology, and the most advanced technologists know this. The past few headlines have demonstrated, and the excerpt from Stealing Fire. So from the BBC, unlike AI models carrying out cognitive or generative tasks such as answering questions or creating pictures, this new technology interacts with and learns from real-world surroundings and environments. So this is the outside-in robot. This is applied to a self-driving car, but a robot and a machine or ecosystem of machines that can have embodied AI don't have to look like a body at all. It can be a building or a smart city. The giant robot, which Aquarius has been described as a giant in ancient texts. The giant robot is a sensor network that gets information from you. Like, you'll be pushed more and more, or like persuaded more and more to quantify your biology with wearables or whatever. Let me just brainwash you again. Cell tissue, soft, evolved, crowdsourced robots, xenobots, the outside-in robot. Jane Street gets into mobile gaming. So the Financial Times refers to Jane Street as the, quote, top Wall Street firm no one's ever heard of. And they're a research-based Wall Street firm. 11 years ago, they made a game called Figgy. It was like a simulation game for trading. And one thing it says is that it teaches trading new, N-O-U-S, which is like something gaming is meant to do. That's like the power of gaming, according to everyone interested in gaming, is like as a teaching tool, and it can teach things, get things into your brain that like linear, normal teaching that we think of doesn't really do, or maybe as efficiently. And Figgy was originally a card deck game. So they made up this game 11 years ago, but it's their entry into mobile gaming. That is something new. So Figgy is now a game that you can download from the App Store, and they can get analytics on how you use it, which, not that there's anything wrong with that. There isn't. Like, I complain about these things, but there are obviously also really helpful things about analytics. I practice a form of analytics myself. That's what astrology is. So, which brings me back to my diatribe about how the Morning Brew podcast gentleman, or at least one of them, was saying that they don't know about gaming, like the future of gaming. And I think there are only 3 possibilities. They don't know what they're talking about, which I doubt. Mark Zuckerberg was on the Morning Brew podcast. So like, if they don't know what they're talking about, that's weird. Or they're being disingenuous. So they're lying. But that would be putting it on them, the actual guys doing the show. So the third way is that they were told to say it, and it is scripted. Which, why did they do that? That's weird. That's a weird thing to say. Gaming is so important. So Jane Street, getting into gaming. The quote that I heard this week on the Morning Brew podcast, it's from the Friday, May 10th edition. They're talking about how they have like stock of the week and like good stock of the week and bad stock of the week. And the bad stocks of the week were like, the story was they were stocks that had, quote, lost value since the pandemic. So it's Zoom, Roblox, I forget the other ones. But they go in at length to Roblox, saying gaming company Roblox revealed losses. And Neil says, and it revealed that parents were not just, I'm quoting, parents were not just shelling out as much money on the platform to keep their kids entertained. I'm still quoting Neil. Toby, if you were the kind of, and mind you, Toby is the one who said the thing where he was like, I don't know about Andreessen Horowitz investing so much in gaming. Toby, if you're the kind of investor who expected COVID trends, while Neil is saying this, I can kind of tell he's reading. It's like around a little bit past the 15-minute mark of the Friday, May 10th edition, if you want to listen to it. So he says, Toby, if you're the kind of investor who expected COVID trends to become permanent features of society, you're nursing some serious losses right now. This is me talking now, no longer quoting. This stuff is interesting given how the world is kind of being set up for climate lockdowns. Neil says, you're blah, 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 you're nursing some serious losses right now. And then Toby, the one who said the stuff about gaming a couple weeks ago, says, they just weren't durable. These trends that a lot of people thought were paradigm shifting did not shift the paradigm. Video calls, online shopping, the gaming numbers we were seeing, none of these were actually things that expanded beyond that specific period. And we are, of course, seeing a lot of these valuations just get a massive haircut. I think it's weird that they're saying this stuff while giant VC firms and niche, darling research-based firms are investing in gaming, and LinkedIn. So they're saying this on this podcast, but in the same breath, the same company talks about LinkedIn getting into games. The headlines on those games were like, they're fun and they'll help you connect with your fellow man on LinkedIn. So after that quote, I want to talk about Michael Crow. I think he's still, at least he used to be, the president of Arizona State University, which, remember from several months back, they are the first ones to partner with OpenAI to have like AI learning stuff. So you'll have your AI learning buddy, which is what children are going to have moving forward. If you have children in school, even homeschool, everyone's going to have an AI learning buddy, which would be great if you knew what was going into the AI and what they were whispering to your child. So Michael Crow, Arizona State University, he is the founding board chair of InQtel, which is the venture capital firm of the CIA. It's like an American defense venture capital firm. InQtel funded Niantic, which made Pokemon Go. And there's a clip somewhere of Michael Crow talking about the importance of games for learning and how they're very efficient, and how like instead of there being a test, you'll never take a test ever, you just play the game. And once you finish the game, that's the proof that you know the stuff. Then you'll get a token. I don't know if he says that or not, but you will. You get a digital asset saying that you completed this module. That's what your wallet will be. Your transcript will be your wallet, will be your resume. Anyway, so ASU partnered with OpenAI. Sam Altman made WorldCoin, the digital ID retina scanning thing. Everybody understands the importance of gaming, how it's the future. The novel 1984, that dystopia took advantage of people's like fear, and it was like oppressive in the way it controlled people, versus Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where people were controlled through pleasure and their desires. Which brings me to another quote from this book. Pleasure is an endlessly motivating and potentially all-consuming pursuit. That's the quote. And when we want people to not pay attention to the importance of something, we ridicule it. We've seen it with 5G, which is probably not great for us, but we're going to increasingly just live in a world where we're bombarded with it all the time, because 5G is needed to keep the networks running all the time, all over the world, so that your digital wallets will function. This type of ridicule to keep people away from stuff that's important was done with witches, even calling them witches, just like any sort of non-official church sanction, because the Catholic Church, you needed an intermediary, a priest, to have a relationship with God for you, just like you need a doctor to have a relationship with your body. So like alternative health in witches, those things were ridiculed to downplay their importance. Let's go back to that quote that I was, Toby from Morning Brew quote that I won't shut up about, which was about how Andreessen Horowitz is investing $600 million in gaming. I don't know how you're going to find enough return on that $600 million to justify it, especially now that the Web3 era of gaming maybe has not panned out how a lot of people expected. I'm just a little dubious about the sectors they chose. Have you met your digital twin? It actually doesn't look like a mini version of you. It doesn't look like a human at all. It looks like it is a Voronoi. It can be represented in maths, like a Voronoi polyhedra. And the digital twin is one Voronoi polyhedron of you, and these various points that are like things you interact with or whatever, or like things about you. So note like, oh, here's this person's digital twin. One of these is like dogs. They're into like dog videos, like cute dog videos. They own dogs. So we'll, for their feed, our algorithm will like throttle up the dog content. And then there's another digital twin, like a part of your whole digital twin is like, there's the polyhedron of you, and then there's the polyhedron of your influences. So it's a political party, the Me Too movement. These things, these messages your influences can be toggled, and then that can augment the digital twin of you. And that's your digital twin. This is also a digital twin. An astrological chart is a data visualization, and the data comes from God, the giant clock God built that we live in. I don't know how else to say it. If that rubs you the wrong way, get over it. The future of technology is spirituality. They're putting like the first places blockchain is going: education, elderly care, and gaming, and spiritual communities. It's faith-based communities. Science and spirituality have always talked to each other. We live in a unique time where like that separation, there's a separation between them that's enforced. You can see it in the techno-materialist, techno-optimism. You can see it in Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's meant to keep you away from the good stuff. Anyway, so this is also your digital twin. This is a natal chart, and it's the same thing. It shows your preferences and patterns, and bundled into one, your influences. A natal chart marks the time and place that you joined us on this timeline, and it shows the positions of the hands of the giant clock that we live in and their prominence for you. The premise of natal astrology is that you take on the quality of the time. Time has qualities that can be read using astrology, and it's ridiculed so as to downplay its importance. And it's not for everyone. I don't think everyone's meant to see this information. Fallen angel lore in the Bible, like astrology, is one of the things that fallen angels gave us. So data dashboards are called God view. Data dashboards that see everything, and that's kind of what this is. So that's what we're working with here. It's a little bit taboo, especially from a spiritual standpoint, which I agree with. Things that are taboo possess power. So it's not, I don't take astrology lightly, and neither should you. It gives you information you're not necessarily supposed to see, except that maybe you are, because if you're a person who's seeking out the information, maybe you're meant to. The time that you stepped onto the timeline, it shapes the rest of your life. It is also an instrument that the continued transits of the planets play every 27.3 days. The moon hits everything in your chart, and that is a part of the rhythm of your life. Every 365 days, the sun hits every planet in your chart. Every 27 point something years, Saturn hits everything in your chart. So not only is your chart a dashboard, a God view of you, it is also the basis for how the dynamic dance of the giant clock we live in plays your life. And a part of the premise of natal astrology is that your chart is time released. The things that the chart shows become important at certain times, and you can calculate that because it all works like clockwork, because it is a clock. And an hour session with me talks about what's up for you right now and in the coming year, according to the data instrument that time is playing, that is your lived experience. This week contains some unexpected elements. Mostly that's aspects with Uranus, the Sun, and Venus. And we're really moving forward. The first thing that happens first thing Monday is Mercury leaves shadow. So the whole Mercury and Aries thing, if you want to look back on that, you can watch my video. So Mercury entered shadow March 18th. So this extended Mercury retrograde period is now coming to a close. Mercury was retrograde from April 1st to April 25th. So leaving shadow means that it has cleared the degrees which it retrograded through. So it is past the point where it stationed retrograde back on April 1st, April Fool's Day. So also very, very early in the morning / middle of the night on Monday, depending on where you are, the Sun conjoins Uranus. Uranus is a catalyzing agent, and the Sun illuminates. It's like illumination of the catalyst. So what does the Sun rule in your chart? And so that's what's your rising sign. So where's the sign of Leo? So the opening sextile with Uranus is July 18th of this year. Venus opening sextile with Uranus is also in July. So something now connects with like how July is like the next piece of the story. So we're beginning a new Uranus cycle. Synodic cycles of outer planets are going to be more connected to like what's going on in the world. And with Uranus and Taurus, that's like where's value stored? Basic stuff versus technology, food, like Impossible Burgers, weird food innovations. Like the last time Uranus was in Taurus, 90 years ago, the chocolate chip cookie and the potato chip were invented. So there's food weirdness. I'm also beginning to associate the Uranus and Taurus story this time with climate change. So, there are weather events, and some of them are technologically produced. Some of them aren't. Kind of unrelated to the climate change, right? Because everything's a binary. So if I say that's related to climate change, then I'm alleging that the whole thing's not real, and I'm not alleging that. So I'm thinking of ecosystem weather pattern shift, which has a different name culturally right now, is very connected to the Uranus and Taurus story. And because we were seeing those headlines this week, I think there might be something else to that. Also that it's squaring the action that's been happening in Aquarius. The sun closing a cycle with Uranus, opening a new cycle. We'll see what the opening, the prologue of this yearly synodic cycle with Uranus is about in July. So then the moon moves into Leo and is squaring Pluto in Aquarius and all the stuff happening in Taurus, asserting your individuality in spite of like maybe some crazy weather events, or you can't eat what you want, or maybe you are eating what you want and that goes in the face of the collective. Everyone's mad at you. And also on Monday, a lot going on Monday, Venus makes its opening sextile with Saturn. This connects to back in late March 21st, Venus conjoined Saturn in Pisces. So we're seeing the opening of this story. A lot of like beginnings are marked this week. So that was exalted Venus conjoining Saturn in Pisces. And now it's Venus in Taurus making a beneficial connection with Saturn. So I think of like resource management and management of expectations still. Venus-Saturn themes remind me of that. Remember that anything in regards to the Venus-Saturn cycle, Saturn exalts in Venus's sign because it's like the spirit of the law, which we are poised to lose with AI-based law and blockchain-based law. That will be increasingly the letter of the law. Like you won't be able to talk to an agent. It will always be robot voice. Venus-Saturn is like who you know in the management and the relationships you develop. Your relationship with the management, with people in power, with the overall authoritative structure, the system, your relationship with the system, and specifically to resources and like physical goods that are pleasurable. There's a lot going on Monday. And Tuesday, the only aspect that goes exact on Tuesday is in the afternoon, the moon squares Venus. So that moon in Leo, any pleasure would be a hard one. Individuality versus Venus in Taurus. Like Venus is relating. So the moon opposite the Pluto in Aquarius paradigm, individuality versus like fear of the collective being corrupt or the collective actually being corrupt or just really powerful. Fear of Sephora kids, whether or not they are manufactured as a phenomenon, somehow like ruining your picnic. The moon in Leo opposite Pluto in Aquarius is like fear of Sephora kids or somehow opposition with Sephora kids, metaphorically. Whether or not, they may or may not be manufactured as a phenomenon. And that tension is also somehow, it leaves the cake out in the rain, in the geo-engineered weather event. And that's Tuesday. It's pretty much Monday and Tuesday as a unit. Tuesday is like metabolizing Monday, digesting the wet cake. I mean, also Tuesday we could lump in the stuff that's happening on Wednesday, which is the moon squaring Uranus, squaring the sun, squaring Jupiter, which is combust. So let's put all that like kind of in Tuesday. And your cake is full of microplastics, and the birthday cake flavor you know and love isn't giving you the same positive outlook because sugar exacerbates cancer. So it's the moon squaring Uranus, the sun, and combust Jupiter. Technically that happens on Wednesday. So also Mercury moves into Taurus on Wednesday. So another planet in Taurus. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Taurus part of our chart. And Mercury in Taurus can be like slow, deliberate, reliable, steady, but also stubborn, just like any planet in Taurus. And Mercury wants to like plan, like when are we going to plant this crop? Because of regular actions over time. Remember, the moon exalts in Taurus. The moon likes regularity. Regular actions over time can create wealth for us. So how do we plan what our regular actions are going to be so as to create optionality for our deliberate commerce? What sort of scenario planning is necessary and like insurance policies that need to be taken out to make sure that if our crops fail, we still experience prosperity and can share that with others. Mercury in Taurus. Something Mercury in Taurus does not want to do is run out of resources. So always having enough, having a spreadsheet of all the things that you need and checking it regularly to make sure that you never run out or even low on anything. And another thing I've noticed about Mercury in Taurus is like a lot of people with Venus ruled Mercuries, if it's not connected to Mars or like afflicted, they won't use, and I have a Mars ruled Mercury, so I use bad words pretty liberally. I'm here to do that. A lot of people with Venus ruled Mercuries are like, most of the time they'll be like, ding dang doodle, or like, gosh, which I find adorable. And not in a demeaning way. Like, I secretly wish I could be that way, but I'm not here to do that, I guess. Also on Wednesday afternoon, the moon moves into Virgo. So it's the moon trining all the Taurus stuff, all the stuff happening in Taurus. And then the moon is helping out with that by being organized. Maybe also by worrying. Like Mercury in the first phase of Taurus, trining the moon in Virgo, like that could be a lot of hand-wringing. A lot of like, you are worrying about a bad scenario you're worried about ending up living in a box under a bridge. And maybe that's motivating you to get organized and do some scenario planning, but it could also like get in the way, because they say worrying is like praying to Satan. There are two ways that could go. Obviously it's good to think ahead, but I can see that with like Wednesday night and Thursday, first trining Mercury and then trining all the Taurus stuff, all the other planets in Taurus. A trine is beneficial, so you can it's easy to like make hay out of this, harvest the grain and separate the stuff that you don't want. But since Virgo has this like signature of worry and hand-wringing, and also like Mercury specifically in the first phase of Taurus has that kind of worry signature, and also the moon's opposing Saturn subtracts and says no, so there might be like kind of a panic flavor. Especially because also Thursday, there are really technically no exact aspects on Thursday, but early morning Friday, Mercury squares Pluto in Aquarius. So I'm going to put that into Thursday and say that like Wednesday night, all day Thursday, there could be this like panic, fear-based operation. And just understand that that's what that is. You can use it to like get organized, get things done, check things off your to-do list. Use your data dashboard, get that God view, scenario plan. Mercury squaring Pluto is also like you get in trouble for something you say, which is great for me. Mercury-Pluto signatures have like a whistleblowing quality. So this like Mercury squaring Pluto might not be so good for Mercury right now. Thursdays feels rough. Friday is full of many trines in the wee hours. It's rough like early in the morning with the Mercury squaring Pluto and then the moon opposing Saturn. Friday technically starts out rough with those aspects that are applying on Thursday. And then the rest of Friday is the moon trines Venus, the moon trines Uranus, the moon trines the sun, and the moon trines Jupiter, which is combust. So Jupiter hasn't been Jupitering as visibly lately. Friday feels like a confluence after a difficult Thursday. And it's like Friday also makes me think of how like luck is when preparation meets circumstance, or when preparation meets opportunity or something. But maybe it all just turns to sand and falls through your hands on Saturday, because in the middle of the night, Saturday, Sunday / early morning, depending on where you are, the moon opposes Neptune. There's a quote in Be Loved Now by Ram Dass. I think it's like a Krishnamurti quote that says like, the salt doll, throw it into the ocean and ask it to report back. It cannot report back because it has become the ocean. So everything dissolving into nothingness can also be transcendent. It doesn't have to be bad, but it can be. Neptune is ambiguous. It's not good or bad. In the way that like the fairy realm in Disney movies is painted as like fairies are good things and delightful and whimsical, but there's also a lot of fairy lore that's not positive. One old like modern example is in the movie Labyrinth. The main character like catches one and it lands in her hand, and then it bites her, and she's like surprised, and they're like, yeah, fairies bite. Benefic, malefic. It all depends on what they're configured to. And right now, Neptune is configured to Saturn, which is a malefic. So maybe the fairy doesn't bite you, but the fairy is not going to grant you any wishes. Then on Saturday, the moon moves into Libra. So the moon is ruled by Venus in Taurus, which is wonderful. And Venus in Taurus, like about to conjoin Uranus, which is like, could be titillating, could be surprising, shocking, unexpected. But also the moon is with the south node. So if the moon is the activator of the zodiac, the Venus-Uranus conjunction is being activated through Venus's sign of Libra, which also contains the south node. So maybe there's like a loss of, like, it drops the charge, or like short circuits, or the grid is down. So like you stick your finger in a light socket, but the power's not on. So maybe that's lucky. You think something bad's going to happen and nothing happens. And maybe that's Venus, a benefic, conjoining Uranus, while moon, activator of the zodiac, is in Libra with the south node, which is like subtractive. Just like I talked about earlier with the sun, beginning a new sun-Uranus story, that we'll see the opening sextile July 18th. We'll see the opening sextile of Venus with Uranus July 8th. So we have these stories like closing out and then beginning regarding like Uranus, catalyst, Uranus in Taurus, which I'm seeing as like weather events. And the moon also trines Pluto. So somehow the moon in Libra with the south node, some great depth of power, but it's not what we think. And weirdly, the power's down. Saturday culminates, it ends. So it's happening all day Saturday. And then when you wake up Sunday, it will have completed the sun's annual conjunction with Jupiter, which is the Jupiter Cazimi. So during the exact moment of it, which is, so it's exact at 11:45 p.m. Pacific time. So put some time on either side of that. It's a slow moving planet, so you could put an hour on either side. Planetary conjunctions with the sun are very good for meditation. With the sun, Jupiter synodic cycle, we're looking at cycles of success and opportunity and like assistance and protection. Jupiter is a benefic, so it doesn't necessarily protect like through like armor or walls in a Saturn way. It protects through like fat, like a protective layer of abundance. And the closing sextile, the sun's closing sextile with Jupiter. So if you want to look at like the beginning of the end of this year's Sun-Jupiter story, the closing sextile was back on March 1st. Jupiter is also wrapping up its time in Taurus. Jupiter is about to move into Gemini. So we're really like looking back, reviewing the past year. What sort of success do you want for yourself? The way the Jupiter sun cycle works is like from the conjunction until the time that Jupiter stations retrograde, which is around the opening trine, Jupiter's opening trine with the sun. That period is often like you can get opportunities or even rewards kind of before you do the thing. It's like angel investor seed funding round before you do the thing. We can see the potential. It's about seeing and investing in potential, especially in Taurus, a material, like an earth sign. And then while Jupiter is retrograde, that's a time to like confer with your venture capital firm, like do those regular meetings, take their advice, make good on that capital that you received to turn it into abundance. That's what Jupiter in Taurus wants to do. Jupiter in Gemini will be something a little different. It'll turn it into abundance of information that may or may not be helpful. We'll have to parse that. That's a part of the challenge of Jupiter in Gemini. So then after the closing trine, which is around the time Jupiter stations direct, the style of like benefic gifts that Jupiter has to offer after the closing trine, after Jupiter stations direct again, will be like, those are like profits, your rewards after you've like put in the work during the retrograde period. So that's the Jupiter cycle. We're entering into the beginning of a new Jupiter cycle and we're closing out an old one. Jupiter conjoins the sun Saturday night. So when you wake up, it will be a new Jupiter synodic cycle. Jupiter will still be combust for a while, which means that it's being like burned by the rays of the sun. So it can't be like accessed or perceived quite as well as during other times. And you can also understand that astronomically speaking, because things mean what they mean in astrology because of what they are. You can't see Jupiter in the sky. Jupiter is like with the sun, so invisible, like literally invisible. So the opening sextile in this next cycle is on August 7th. That's Jupiter is in Gemini for the opening sextile. And then the opening trine, which is around the time Jupiter stations retrograde is around on October 9th this year. Jupiter stations retrograde, and the trine is on October 13th. And then Jupiter stations direct 2025, February 4th. The angel investor style face of Jupiter will be now basically through, or like, Saturday, May 18th through October 9th. Jupiter investing in your potential. October 9th through February 4th, that's like you're putting in the work. You're meeting with your investors. You're taking their advice. You're doing the hard work yourself. You're doing like the boring hard work. And you're working smart too. There's like working hard and working smart. Saying this for myself, exercise is a non-negotiable. One reason why people do well is because they feel good. And a lot of people are very dispossessed because they don't feel good. And there are a lot of things that in the world that make it hard to feel good, especially like Pluto in Aquarius is squaring Taurus for 20 years. It's going to be hard to feel good. The world's actively conspiring against you feeling good. Blue light is a really good example. Success comes easier when you feel amazing. You're more resilient. You're more open to new opportunities. That's a Jupiter thing. It's definitely a Jupiter and Taurus thing. Let's carry it into Jupiter and Gemini. Carry it into our curiosity and our growth mindset, which I'll talk about more in my Jupiter and Gemini video. October 9th through February 4th. Do the work. That's the style of Jupiter. And then after Jupiter stations direct in February of 2025, which there's a lot changing during that time for sure. Thinking about now how when Jupiter turns into like rewards, like profits and award ceremony, Jupiter, you won the race, or like here's all this abundance because you put in the work and you got the profits. It doesn't have to be money also, can just be like more opportunities are awarded to you. That period begins February 4th and ends with Jupiter's next conjunction with the Sun, which is June 24th, 2025. So there will not be a Jupiter Cazimi in Gemini. It will be in the sign of Cancer where Jupiter is exalted. So plant the seeds now. If you get angel investors, you take them seriously. Keep an eye out for opportunities like that. And then while Jupiter's retrograde, do the work. Because next year, there is so much change. And a part of the change is Jupiter in the best place in the zodiac. Jupiter exalts in Cancer partially because it knows what to invest in. So that next like angel investor period is going to be potent. And the rewards period, there's a lot of change coming. And the Jupiter cycle points to how we can leverage potentials for positive change, hope and upliftment, and feeling great. So that's Saturday. And then Sunday, we have all week long, we have Mars applying to the North Node in Aries. So our drive is like turned up to 11. We're flooring it this week. Sunday, you wake up, new Jupiter cycle, but it starts with a bang. The moon in Libra with the South Node opposes Mars with the North Node. So that's like a lot of rage. Make good use of it. And the moon conjoins the South Node. I kind of don't know what to make of this in terms of if the moon is the activator, manifestor of the zodiac. But Mars, it's opposing Mars, and Mars is applying to the North Node, and the moon is conjoining the South Node. The stuff happening this week with the moon in Libra has like this, like, maybe it goes unnoticed. Maybe it goes into like more of a spiritual teaching, something you can learn rather than something you can like do and accomplish. Another thing that happens is the sun makes its opening sextile with Neptune. And that's that. You can look back. I have a video from back in March. Sun conjoining Neptune on March 17th. The sun's relationship with Neptune illuminates, our aura or like our inner layers of being that we don't normally see. It illuminates how you can't quite put your finger on some stuff. Some stuff isn't quite like so distinct. And Saturn is with Neptune right now, so there might be like some indistinct things being made distinct, or things that were normally pretty hardly delineated are now not quite so clear. But it's a part of the Sun-Neptune story that began back on March 17th. So think about that time through now. So a lot of things this week that were like happening back in March, we're seeing like another part of that story. Sun sextile Neptune, Venus sextile Saturn. This week we're seeing things happening now that we're going to see like the next chapter begin in July. Sun conjunct Uranus, Venus conjunct Uranus. So Sunday does have this, Sunday's so weird. It has this like impressionist painting data dashboard. The data dashboard of the future is like much more artistic and creative. And it's like the imperceptible sheaths slid into your skull to control you, maybe. Or maybe it's actual ineffable wonder. Neptune is the imagination. It's deception. It's spirituality. It's everything kind of blurring into everything else. How reality is an illusion, and the difference between reality and illusion blurring itself. But that happens like nestled in between this like moon opposing Mars, moon south node, moon like losing its charge, like Mars with the north node. A main thing that characterizes Mars north node can be confusion. This aggression, like this fighting, it's literally lockjaw. It's like a dog. When I was a kid, a dog chomped my leg, and like it's that. It won't let up. Keep that in mind for any arguments coming up all week long, especially since Jupiter is combust. And remember, your Wi-Fi is a camera that can see through walls.